So last time we talked a bit about how what we learned at Cuddle Party and kind of ending a cuddle with I'm done, I'm complete, how we touched on how that can work in the real world. But what would you say, let's say you've got people who have been talking a couple weeks regularly and one decides they are done, but they want to be kind and considerate and polite and let the other person know they are done. They're not just in the hospital or something. They want it to be known and kind of firm, but kind. What what other ways can we communicate that using the skills we've learned at Cuddle Party?
So this is a good question. I mean, being firm and kind, I'm also going to say without over explaining, right? Without over explaining or defending or justifying. And I think, for me, the first part is just grounding myself, which is not easy to do, but reminding myself that I'm not obligated, that I don't owe this person anything, that there is not an entitlement here. And I think that often our default culture sort of I think it's easy to not be aware of the entitlement. Sometimes we feel, even though something wasn't said, oh, well, I've come to expect this, and that means I deserve it. And then I'm offended if it doesn't happen. And it's like, it's important, I think, to work against that. So the first way we can do that is just remind ourselves, right? Like, I'm not obligated. I don't have to do a lot of emotional labor. I don't have to make it okay for this person. Not only do I not have to, but I can't really, right? It's not my job to control how they feel about it. So that's I think the first thing. And then within that, I think once, at least for myself, once I sort of have gotten clear about that and calmed and sort of addressed all the little parts of me that are like, it's not safe, to just be like, it's okay. And then I think it's because it's not so much what we say, it's how we say it, right? It's the energy behind it. It's the emotion. If we're feeling defensive, we'll say it kind of like, hey, or we'll be a little bit fawning about it. Like, please feel good about this, but it's more about just, what, this has been great. And maybe expressing appreciation for I've really enjoyed the opportunity to get to know you better. And, I'm just finding in my life at this time, or the balance is, I don't have time for it, or whatever that is. And to say, I'm going to cut back.
That seems like a wise option. And it is a great point that expectations are not the same as an agreement. And so, we definitely talk about honor your agreements in Cuddle Party. So whatever agreement you had with the important people in your life that you came into the room with, you honor those agreements. And similarly, bringing it back to this type of situation, let's say you have someone who, knows that they struggle with feelings of abandonment. And so they say up front, hey, listen, if we continue talking for a while, will you agree to let me know if you're going to be done? Once that agreement is in place, that is different because it's not just an assumption or expectation. So I guess I wonder, can we create like a library of phrases like, this doesn't quite feel like a fit for me, or, again, I think the gratitude that you mentioned is really important. And I wonder, like, are there a few more phrases we could add to the mix?
Gosh. Okay. So you're talking about once we've made an agreement, honoring that agreement and changing that agreement, like renegotiating. You're saying, this has been great, and I'd like to make a change. Maybe something like that. I'd like to make a change, or I'm noticing, that when we made this agreement, I'm feeling differently now than I did in the beginning, and I'd like to get us up to speed. I'd like to be current with you about that. That could be a good way to kind of bring into it. That's something we talk about in Cuddle Party, is that change is a constant, right? Change is what's happening. And so when we change our mind, what we're really doing is staying current with how things are, as opposed to how they were or how we thought they would be. And that's the part of the practice of just being honest and noticing what's so. This is what's so for me, and communicating that. And then letting them know, I respect you and I want to be open with you and clear, so that we both know where we stand.
I feel like that noticing is so important because the noticings can be happening in silence. And if nobody's communicating the noticing, then the result of it can be kind of a surprise. And I know we've talked about like, while in the midst of a cuddle party, we could be thinking, okay, my leg is starting to fall asleep. I'm still okay for now, but in a few minutes I might need to move, or I'm starting to get thirsty. I'm still okay for probably 10 minutes, but kind of notifying in advance that a change might be coming so it doesn't like shock the system. And I feel like announcing noticings seems like a key to that.
Yes, that's a great observation. I was going to say noticing, but that is a great observation, Larysa. And, you know, as you were talking, I realized in my, you know, default life, meaning in my business life, sort of outside of workshop, I recently came across a dynamic where I was clarifying where somebody was at. And this person was feeling like defensive and saying, I'm feeling pressure. And it was like, okay, you know, like, whatever pressure you're feeling, it's not coming from me. First of all, I'm not, you know, and then, but I want information. I'm wanting to know. And in that process, what became clear is that what was clear to them, they hadn't said it, they hadn't stated it. And I thought that was so interesting that sometimes it's easy because we know it just seems obvious, but if we haven't actually stated how we feel, that the other person doesn't know. So they're working on different assumptions. And that was just a good noticing. And it's so interesting. So what are the assumptions that we're making that we think are obvious, but we haven't actually said it? And so the other person is making up a different story about why things are happening. So yes, communication is not simple or easy. And it's always helpful to just say the things out loud and as neutral as we can, right? Yeah.
I think sometimes we might remember a time perhaps in our eternal history where we were more psychic. There's a book I love called The Message, and the second part's From the Other Side. He is in a coma and kind of visits the other side where they're talking with their mouth for his benefit, but they basically have telepathic communication. And it makes me wonder, did we ever have that? And we're feeling so stuck in these human bodies not having that.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking with noticing, you know, what can you notice? I can notice how my body feels. Is my leg falling asleep? Am I hungry? I can notice my emotions, like, am I feeling safe? Am I feeling cozy or nervous? And I can notice what's going on in the environment, like, oh, there's a noise outside from a truck. What other types of noticings would you say are noticeable?
Well, that's great. And to me, that's the practice, right, of mindfulness and being present with what's happening in us. And what I would say is that sometimes it's easy to go into story. Like, I'm noticing this, and then to go into why I'm feeling this. So for me, I like to keep it, especially in the context of communication with someone, it's just simple. Like, I notice I'm uncomfortable, or I notice I'm feeling a little tense about this, or just uncomfortable. I like that because it encompasses mental and emotional, you know, and physical and all of that. But to just say, here's the story that's going on in me. I notice I'm feeling uncomfortable. It might be because of this, or who knows? It doesn't really matter, is what I say to my clients. What matters is, if you're uncomfortable, we need to respond to that with compassion. And that's responsibility, is to say, I need to adjust something here, because the discomfort, if it's not addressed, is going to pollute the water. It's going to pollute the dynamic. So it's really just being transparent about that. And even when I work with clients with Cuddlist, you know, we have this agreement. If I'm uncomfortable at any time, I promise I'll let you know. And the reason for that is so that you don't have to try to read my mind. You don't have to try to figure it out. I'll take responsibility for it, and I'll let you know. And likewise, I'm not a very good mind reader. And as much as I don't want to make you uncomfortable, I can't read your mind. So will you be willing to let me know as well?
That is so important and so helpful. And I thank you again for sharing your wisdom. And all these reminders are so needed in life. And I thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's a pleasure, Larysa.